Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome. You are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me today on the program. It is Monday. We are in the lab room. There's a lot to get to. Tell you what, a lot happened over the weekend. A lot happened since the last time we spoke. And so I want to get to some of the things that I think are pertinent. And I want to start with Dwight Freeney and Charles Woodson being shown the door. Each of these guys have been informed that they will not be retained by their previous teams. Freeney, not as much a surprise to me as Woodson is. I think that Charles Woodson still has something left in the tank. I'm not saying that Dwight Freeney doesn't, but he doesn't fit what they're doing in Indianapolis. The direction that they're going in, I always said that I thought he would have the toughest time transitioning to a 3-4 defense. I thought that Robert Mathis, his body type and his skill set lends itself to making the transition seamlessly. Meanwhile, Dwight Freeney is a 4-3 defensive end. That's what he's built to be. He's not built to stand up outside and take on big tackles and in the run game and, be out in space covering, running backs and that's not his forte. He's a guy that needs to be getting up the field. And in a 3-4 defense, you have to be extremely versatile. You have to be able to do a lot of different things, be a jack of all trades. I don't think that's in Dwight Freeney's DNA. And so I knew he was going to have the toughest time of those defensive ends making that transition. And look, it doesn't help that Dwight Freeney is getting up there in age either. He's not a spring chicken, so that doesn't help him either. But Charles Woodson being released, I think that his cap number is way too high. And that's probably why he was released. Now, look, he is a guy that is often injured. And so I'm pretty sure the Packers took that into consideration as well. But at the end of the day, Charles Woodson is an impact player. And if his cap number wasn't as high, I don't know if he would have been released. But the fact of the matter is he's making too much money. Packers need to shore some things up. And in order to free up some cap space, Charles Woodson became a cap casualty. But I think Charles Woodson can go somewhere else, help a veteran-laden team get over the hump. And so if there's a team out there that needs some safety help, Charles Woodson might be your man. He's a guy that makes plays, forces fumbles, picks passes off, can cover guys in the slot, cover a tight end. And so he's going to be a valuable asset to someone. More so than Dwight Freeney. I don't know if Dwight Freeney really has a lot left to offer anyone. I tell you what, Dwight Freeney can probably still get you anywhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 9 sacks a season. I don't know if he's a double-digit guy anymore. I don't know if he can still do that. I think those days might be behind him. But for a team that struggles getting to the quarterback, it might not be that big of a risk to take a flyer out on Dwight Freeney because he can probably still get you 6, 7, 8, possibly 9 sacks in a season and help you get to the quarterback, generate more pressure, and potentially force some fumbles and get you some turnovers. So I just found that to be interesting over the weekend. Two guys that have been very productive players throughout their careers being shown the door. And in the National Football League, it's a business. And you can't take things personal. Dwight Freeney has not taken it personal. Neither has Charles Woodson. And so I expect them to find more work with another team, latch on somewhere, and be productive as their careers wind down. Now, looking at another story that I found fascinating over the weekend, John Dorsey, the GM, the newly crowned GM of the Kansas City Chiefs, who hold the number 1 overall selection in the 2013 draft, has come out and said, look, there's no top QB in this draft. Translation, we won't be picking a quarterback with our first overall selection in the draft. That's what that says to me. When you're not sold on any one of these quarterbacks, you can't make an investment like the first selection in the draft on one of them. You can't do that. If you don't believe strongly enough in one of these guys to say that they're head and shoulders above the rest of the class, then you can't select them with the first overall pick in the draft. It's just too much pressure. It's too much riding on your franchise to do that. So what that lets me know is they're either going to select a defensive end or they're going to select the tackle Jackal. I don't know what it'll be. They might go in a totally different direction, but I tell you what, it won't be a quarterback. That's what that tells me. I can assure you of that. Also, in some very fascinating news, Cliff Avril over the weekend said, look, I'm tired of being jerked around. I want to be paid. I want to be rewarded for my play on the field. I want Super Mario money. Wow, that's a profound statement. Again, much like Percy Harvin, I talked about it on the Friday edition of In the Lab Room that Percy Harvin wants Megatron money. And now Cliff Avril is saying that he wants Super Mario money. And much like in the case of Percy Harvin, I think he's over-exaggerating what he's really looking to be paid. Now, look, if someone was willing to cough up and fork over that type of money, Cliff Avril would not hesitate to sign. Hey, where do I sign? Where do I put my name? But no one's going to pay him that type of money. To me, he's not even that big of an impact player. He can get you double-digit sacks. He's a sack getter in the National Football League. He'll get you 12 and a half, 13 and a half sacks. But I don't see him being a 16 and a half, an 18 and a half, a 20 sack guy. I don't see him ever reaching that threshold. So he needs to be paid like a guy that will get you 12 and a half sacks and force 2 fumbles on a season. And that's not Super Mario money. Mario Williams has had a season where he's had 17, 18 sacks. We know he can rev it up when he's playing at his best. I don't know if Cliff Avril will ever be a guy that can get you 18, 19, 20 sacks. So, no, you're not going to get Super Mario money, and I don't know if he's really looking for that type of money. Think, again, just like Percy Harvin, he's trying to set the bar extremely high, which a lot of teams will tell him, get out of here with that nonsense, come back and talk to me when you're talking with some sense. And then, of course, that number will dwindle down somewhere in here. Teams want to pay him somewhere here. They'll meet somewhere in the middle at a common ground. He'll get paid. That's probably what's going to eventually happen with Cliff Avril. I don't know if he's going to sign with Detroit or not. He's going to be paid by someone, though, because he can get after the quarterback. Also, in news over the weekend, the Eagles said, look, Nick Foles is officially on the trading block. All takers, please step to the forefront. And so the Eagles said, look, wait. Before you step up, because I don't want to waste my time, don't want to waste yours nor mine, before you step up to the podium, please make sure you have your requisite first or second round pick handy. Which means if you don't have your first or second round pick and are willing to give it to us for Nicholas Foles, and look, I don't want just a first or a second round pick. In addition to that, I want a 4th or a 5th or a 6th round draft choice as well. So the Eagles are asking for an awful lot for a guy that was okay, wasn't great in his first showing as a rookie in the National Football League. You know, Nick Foles played solid, and at the end of the season, you could see he was getting comfortable and he was getting better. But not first round pick better, not second round pick better. Look, the Eagles are known for raping teams. They did it with Kevin Kolb and the Arizona Cardinals. They'll do it to you. Don't allow the Eagles to pull the wool over your eyes. Now, look, Nick Foles probably can be a very good quarterback in the National Football League if he gets in the right system with the right head coach in the right offense. Gets a good offensive line in front of him because, as we both know, Nick Foles is not an overly athletic quarterback. He has 2 left feet. He really doesn't want to run anywhere. And so if you can protect him, keep him upright, the guy is 6'6", so he can see over the line. He can see everything that's developing down the field. He can be a very serviceable, maybe even top-tier quarterback in this league if he's put in the right circumstances. So There is risk involved in acquiring Nicholas Foles, but I tell you what, if he's put in the right system and allowed to flourish, it could be a very, very good deal for some team out there. Now, I'm hearing the Chiefs are interested, and it makes sense. Andy Reid was his coach in Philadelphia. Andy knows him very intimately, probably knows he can get it done in the National Football League and doesn't mind coughing up a second-round pick for his services. But I tell you what, I know Andy Reid isn't trying to part with a first-round pick for Nicholas Foles. So if the Eagles are to get a deal for Nick Foles, it's probably going to be a second-round pick. I can't see or envision anyone being dumb enough to give the Eagles a first-round selection for Nick Foles. The potential is there, but you don't give up a first-round pick for potential. You give up a second-round pick for potential. You give up a first-round pick for a known commodity. If this guy is a Pro Bowl quarterback and he might be past his prime and you think that he's past his prime, but maybe he's not really past his prime, you just have another younger quarterback that you're ready to give the keys over to, then yeah, you give up a first-round pick. Like a Drew Brees, for instance, when he was in San Diego. He was the older guy, even though he was still relatively young. He was the older guy on the block. The new kid on the block was Phillip Rivers, and they were ready for Phillip to take over the reins. So in that case, you would give up a first-round pick because Drew Brees was a really good quarterback. He was a Pro Bowl type quarterback. Now, he wasn't always that good in San Diego, but you knew if given the chance, if put in the right system, Drew Brees could carve up NFL defenses. We're not sure about Nicholas Foles quite yet. So you don't give up a first-round pick for potential. You give up a second-round pick for potential. You give up a first-round pick for a known commodity. And Nicholas Foles is not, I repeat, is not a known commodity. So the Eagles, they're going to play it up as if, hey, I need a first-round pick. But at the end of the day, when that well dries up and they realize we're not getting anything more than a 2, they'll give up that first-round pick talk and they'll settle for someone's 2 and a 4, 2 and a 5, and keep it moving. And don't be surprised if you couple the two topics that I talked about, this one and what John Dorsey, the GM of the Chief, said, there's no top quarterback in the draft. You put those two together, don't be surprised if the Chiefs are the team that comes calling for the services of Nicholas Foles. Keep in mind, Andy Reid is the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he was the one who drafted Nicholas Foles in the first place. So I'm adding up. I'm just adding. I'm just doing simple math. 2 + 2 = 4. That's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything that requires me to think extensively. I'm not doing rocket science or brain surgery here. I'm just putting numbers together. 2 + 2 is 4. 1 + 1 is 2. 3 + 3 is 6. That's all I'm doing. Also on the show today, I want to talk about concussions, and more specifically, the concussion of one Jahvid Best. Nate Burleson is a guy that talks a lot. And sometimes you don't pay attention to what Nate has to say because he talks so much. Again, when you talk a lot, your words become less and less profound unless everything that comes out of your mouth is something of worth. But when you say a lot of things and much of it is nothing, then when you talk, sometimes people tend not to listen. And that's what I find myself doing with Nate Burleson a lot of times, because he does a lot of talking, and a lot of times it's of no concern to myself. It really makes me no difference one way or another. It has no bearing or no impact on the way I think. It's just words coming out of Nate Burleson's mouth. It's not very thought-provoking. This, however, is something that I think Nate Burleson is dead on with. I think he threw a dart and it hit smack dab in the middle of that target. He hit bullseye with this one. And he said to Jahvid Best, and not necessarily to him, he's probably said it to him in some form before, but he said to the media, look, if it were me, if I were Jahvid Best, I'd shut it down. Again, I think Jahvid Best and his situation is unique. Guys get concussions in the league every week. they don't sit out, 2 seasons essentially to try and get back to play. Normally you have your concussion test. If you pass the baseline test, you're able to play. If you're not having any symptoms, you're able to play. But if you don't, they sit you out another week until you can pass the test, a la Michael Vick, who had to sit out about 3, maybe 4 weeks until he was able to pass all the tests, not have any symptoms, and was cleared to go. Now, Jahvid Best has still not been cleared to play. And that lets you know that he should not be playing football. And it all stems from that huge fall that he had in college at Cal, where he went up in the air probably about 10 feet and plummeted down on his head, got a concussion. It was a scary moment. He had some more concussions in the National Football League, and it's just been blunt force trauma after blunt force trauma to the head. And he really needs to give it up because it's no longer about football. It's about your well-being. And if he continues to push it and eventually gets cleared and he comes back and suffers another concussion or another concussion, we don't know if the next one is the serious one that puts him in a coma. We don't know if the next one is the one that ends his life or the one that has him at the age of 33 not being able to remember what happened at age 27. So he doesn't need to risk that. It's not a matter of him trying to come back and play the game that he probably loves and wants to be paid to play. Look, when you get to this point, this is all you know. You've been playing football this long, and so this is your life. This is your career. This is how you make your money. This is how you eat. But you got to think about yourself and what you need to do moving forward to make sure that you have a very good quality of life later on in life. And if he comes back and plays, I don't know if his quality of life will be the way that it should and be the best that it can possibly be. Let's face it, his quality of life has already been affected because of the concussions that he's taken. If he comes back and takes more concussions, I venture to say that his quality of life will be in the dumps. So I think Nate Burleson hit it on the head here. Jahvid Best needs to hang it up. Someone needs to get in his ear and tell him, look, man, it's not worth it. You've had the chance to play in the National Football League. It was a pleasure. It was a joy. Cherish those moments that you've had. Figure out something else to do with your life. Whether it's go back to Cal and do some radio or work with the running backs at Cal or whatever. Figure out something. If you want to still be around football, figure out a way to do that without compromising your future. But you don't need to be back on the football field taking shots to the head. The running back position is one of the most taxing positions in all of football. You take the most hits, you take a big pounding, and he doesn't need to come back and subject himself to that kind of punishment. Hang it up, Jahvid Best. Listen to Nate Burleson here. Take his advice and hang it up. But that's a touchdown. Go ahead and throw it up. Go ahead. Don't be afraid. Toss it up. It's a touchdown. Want to tack on this quick extra point. Now, I was just talking about Nate Burleson and him talking all the time. And the reason why I said that Nate Burleson is a guy that you really have to take what he says with a grain of salt, because he was the same guy that said, hey, Titus Young is an ultra competitive guy that wants the football, and I think that he'll be a great player in the National Football League. Really? Really? And so that's why I said you have to take what Nate Burleson says with a grain of salt. Speaking of Titus Young, that brings me to my extra point. I told you I love when I'm right. And I love to say I told you so, and I love to say I was right. So I should put on my Nostradamus cap right now because I was right again. And I said that Titus Young, until he gets the help that he needs, should not be on an NFL roster. He's an ultra talented guy, but he's not right mentally. And if you can't make it with Jeff Fisher, you can't make it in the National Football League. Simple as that. Because Jeff Fisher is a coach that is willing to take chances. He's just willing to take chances. He doesn't mind. All right. This is the same guy that coached Albert Haynesworth. He coached Cortland Finnegan in Tennessee. And the first transaction that he made when he was named head coach of the St. Louis Rams was to go out and bring back Cortland Finnegan over to St. Louis. So he doesn't mind dealing with crazy. As a matter of fact, I call Jeff Fisher the MC of the National Football League. MC standing for managers of crazies. Because he can manage crazy personalities. He doesn't mind having a very eccentric or a very loose cannon type of player in his locker room. Because he can control guys like that. But Titus Young is different. He's a cancer. And he doesn't care who he spreads it to. He's going to say what he feels. He's going to do whatever he wants. And if you don't like it, get in line to complain. And guys like that you can't have around your football team because they rub off on guys who are impressionable. Some guys, they listen to everyone and they're someone who doesn't stand for anything, so they fall for anything. And so you don't want guys like Titus Young around players like that are easily influenced. And so Jeff Fisher only needed 10 days to figure out this guy is not what I need on my roster. And if Jeff Fisher can't control you and doesn't like the direction you're going in and has to cut you loose, you can't be on anyone's roster in the National Football League. You can't. And so I said this. I said on my show, maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I said, whoever decides to sign Titus Young, because you knew there was going to be someone who thought they could reform him. Someone that thought, if I just get him in my locker room and I get some positive influences around him and I'm able to give him a little bit of tutelage, he'll be fine. There was going to be one team that thought they could do that. Jeff Fisher was that guy to step up to the plate. But I said, after having him in your locker room for a while, you're going to realize, man, I'm in over my head on this one. This guy's got to go. And Jeff Fisher got to that point a lot sooner than I thought that. And then I thought that he would. I mean, Jeff Fisher reached that point in less than two. Jeff Fisher reached that point in less than 2 weeks. Jeff Fisher sat down with this guy, looked him in his eyes, and said, "You're crazy. You got to go, man. You don't have to go home, but you got to get out of here." And so he dismissed Titus Young, and he basically said, look, for what we're trying to do right now with our franchise, this guy isn't a good fit right now. Translation, he's crazy, and he shouldn't be working on any National Football League team. That's just my translation. That's my interpretation of what Jeff Fisher just said. Because if you can't play for Jeff Fisher and you have a bit of a problem and you can't fit in with what Jeff Fisher is trying to have you do, then you can't play in the National Football League. My gosh. And so Titus Young is at a crossroads. And really, I don't think he's going to get a job in the National Football League. I don't think he needs to until he rectifies whatever problems he has going on in that noggin of his. And that's going to do it for this episode of In the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me here on this Monday. Got to a lot, again, over the weekend. A lot of things happened, and I felt like we needed to address a lot of them, and we did. So, great episode. I thank you for joining me here in the Lab Room. There's many ways to contact the show. There's Facebook. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. There's YouTube. Louis T is the page. Subscribe to the page if you enjoy the videos. Also, there's Twitter. @In the Lab Room is the Twitter handle. Always remember that any one of those social media websites, if you access them, I will find out because it will come directly to the inbox. Speaking of which, the inbox is inthelaproom@gmail.com. I thank you for joining me here today on the program. Look forward to seeing you here in the near future. And we'll talk about the direction that this program is going in and some of the segments that we'll have swirling around here in the upcoming weeks. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that tomorrow here in the Lab Room. Have a good one. Want to see you back here, same time, same place, and as always, have a good one. Take care. See you tomorrow.